They ignored me at Christmas. Not just once, it became tradition. I was the one whose name was left out of the gift exchange, the one whose chair at the dinner table always seemed to be missing. They'd say things like, "Oh, we didn't think you'd be in town," or "You're always so busy with your little projects." Little. That word stayed with me longer than the cold leftovers they forgot to offer. My successes were minor. My voice optional. My presence tolerated at best. I remember sitting in my apartment that first Christmas alone, watching the snow pile up outside the window, pretending I didn't care. I poured myself wine I couldn't afford and ate takeout while their photos flooded social media. Warm lights, cozy sweaters, and smiles wide enough to include everyone except me. No message. No call. Not even a lazy Merry Christmas text. I wasn't just excluded. I was erased. The worst part wasn't being alone. It was knowing they didn't notice. There's something deeply hollow about being forgotten by people who are supposed to remember you without effort. I was the sibling who didn't go into law, the cousin who didn't settle down, the creative one, a label spoken like a diagnosis. I tried to shrug it off, to believe that maybe it was unintentional. Maybe. But after the third year of silence, I stopped giving them the benefit of the doubt. So I turned inward. If I wasn't going to be invited into their world, I'd build my own. I worked through the holidays. No parties, no gifts, just plans and goals. I didn't know it at the time, but that exclusion was the best gift they never gave me. It freed me. While they shared desserts and inside jokes, I mapped out a different kind of future, one where my worth didn't require anyone's invitation. I didn't launch a company out of revenge. Let's get that clear. It wasn't some grand act of rebellion, some middle finger in the form of a business plan. I started because I was tired of waiting. Waiting to be noticed. Waiting to be enough. Waiting for people who never really saw me to give me permission to matter. I had ideas, skills, discipline. All I lacked was applause, so I stopped asking for it. At first, it was just me in a rented co-working space. I didn't even have a name for the business. Just a series of folders on my laptop and the stubborn refusal to remain invisible. I worked like I had something to prove, not to them, not even to the world, but to that younger version of me who once begged for attention with good grades and polite silence. I owed that kid a better ending. My first few clients came from cold emails, trial projects, people who took a chance. I didn't dress the part. I didn't have a polished pitch deck, but what I had was an obsessive commitment to results. I underpromised and overdelivered, every time, and slowly the word got out. Not in some viral, social media way, just quietly, steadily. The kind of growth that doesn't get noticed until it's undeniable. The holidays came again. Same family photos. Same "we missed you" captions that didn't include my name. But this time, I wasn't watching from the outside, bitter and aching. I was busy. Too busy. I had deadlines. Meetings. A revenue chart that didn't care if they remembered me. Still, I felt a pang. Even when you move forward, your past has a way of texting you back. But I reminded myself, they don't have to believe in you for you to become real. The first time I saw her name in my inbox, I thought it was spam. Subject line, long time. Need a favor, smiling face with smiling eyes. The smiley face felt like a slap. It was my cousin, the one who once told me at age 12 that some people just aren't meant to shine. Suddenly, she wanted to connect. Said she heard about the company, was so proud of me, and wondered if I could take a look at her startup idea. As if we were equals. As if none of it had happened. More emails followed. My brother, the one who forgot to invite me to his engagement party, wanted help finding a remote job. Said he'd been thinking about a career pivot. My aunt messaged me on LinkedIn to ask if I'd consider sponsoring her charity gala. She even signed it with "Love Always," as if affection could be retroactively applied like a coat of paint on a rotting wall. They weren't reconnecting. They were repositioning. I answered some of them. Politely. Formally. I used the same tone I reserve for clients I know will never pay on time. Cordial, professional, just attached enough to avoid confusion. Because here's the thing, I didn't need apologies. I needed space. And success gave me that. Suddenly, I wasn't the forgotten relative. I was the one with a company. With access. With a platform they couldn't ignore. So they rewrote the narrative. It wasn't they excluded me. It was I drifted. Neat little revision. But I didn't correct them. I let them believe their version. It cost me nothing, and it saved me time. Because now, every interaction was on my terms. I picked which calls to return, which messages to leave on read, and every time I declined an invitation or passed on a favor, I felt something I never had at their Christmas tables: control. I wasn't petty. I was precise. There's a difference. The company anniversary was coming up. 5 years since I filed the paperwork with trembling hands and a credit card balance I didn't want to look at. My assistant suggested an event. Something elegant but grounded, she said. Invite clients, partners, maybe even some old friends. She said old friends like it was just a phrase, not a category loaded with ghosts. But I nodded. Make a list, I said. And she did. It wasn't petty. I wasn't planning revenge. The guest list included people who helped build what I created, some directly, others indirectly, through doubt, through exclusion. And yes, some of them had last names I shared. I invited them all, not out of forgiveness, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity. I wanted to see how they'd enter a space they never believed I could create. Would they feel pride? Shame? Would they remember the empty chairs they left me years ago? The night of the event, the room shimmered. Champagne towers, gold-trimmed name cards, live jazz that echoed through the venue like a heartbeat. I wore black. No speech. No spotlight. Just quiet power. When my cousin walked in, the same one who once said I'd never make it without marrying rich, she actually gasped. Wow, you really did all this, she said. I smiled. With the help of good people. In a little time, they clinked glasses, complimented the branding, asked about expansion. But what they didn't ask about was Christmas, or why it took this party, this moment, for them to remember I exist. Maybe they assumed I'd forgotten, or forgiven, or both. It didn't matter. They were here now, sipping champagne in a place built from silence, exclusion, and a fire they never thought would last beyond a spark. The toast began, as they always do, with people who had barely spoken to me 5 years ago now raising glasses like they'd invested from day one. One client spoke sincerely, crediting our partnership for doubling their revenue. Another described me as an inspiration to young entrepreneurs. I smiled, nodded, accepted their words with grace. But I couldn't ignore the table near the back, the one where my family sat, exchanging glances like tourists in a city they once refused to visit. My brother finally stood. He wasn't on the list of speakers, but I let it happen. I just want to say, he began, how proud we all are. Really. She's built something amazing. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away. We always knew she had it in her. A few claps followed. I took a sip of water. Not champagne. That toast wasn't for me. It was for the version of me they could now claim without guilt. This is what people do when they miss your rise. They rewrite your origin story to fit their comfort. Suddenly, they always knew. Suddenly, they were just giving you space. They turned distance into wisdom, silence into support. And maybe some of them believe it. Maybe after enough time, the life softens into something easier to carry. I didn't stand to correct him. I didn't need to. The building we stood in, the staff, the clients, the signed contracts on the wall, did it for me. After the speeches, someone asked for a photo. All the family together, they said. I joined, standing between people who once forgot to add me to the group chat. The flash went off. A moment captured, not for what it was, but for what it needed to look like. And I let them have it. Let them post it. Let them pretend. Because at the end of the night, when the lights dimmed and the champagne ran dry, I was the one signing the checks. And no filter could edit that. I stayed after the event ended. The room, once full of laughter and glasses clinking, was now quiet, just the soft hum of the cleaning crew and the last notes of the jazz band packing up. I walked past the table where my family had sat, their napkins still folded neatly, barely touched. It hit me then. They had come, but they hadn't stayed. Not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. They showed up for the picture, for the champagne, for the story. Not for me. I sat in the corner of the room, staring at the space where we had built everything from scratch. There was no part of this night that hadn't been earned. Not gifted, not inherited, earned. Through lonely winters, missed calls, and more rejection emails than I could count. I built a place where I was no longer waiting for someone else to make room for me. I made the room. I bought the table. One of my longtime employees passed by and smiled. "That was something," she said. "They really showed up, huh?" I nodded. "They showed up now," I replied. And that was the truth. Maybe it was late. Maybe it was shallow. But it was now. And maybe that counted for something, not as redemption, but as recognition. And I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not bitter. Just free. Free from needing what they never gave me. This Christmas, I'll send out invitations. Real ones. With names spelled correctly. But not to prove anything. Not to reclaim old seats. I'll do it because this time, I get to choose who's at my table. And maybe, just maybe, someone else who was once ignored will sit across from me and know they're finally seen. Because sometimes, the greatest success isn't the company, or the champagne, or the applause. It's simply becoming the person no one thought you could be, and smiling anyway. A few weeks after the event, I got a package in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting gave it away. My aunt's elegant cursive, the same style she used when labeling the adults' only presents under the Christmas tree back in the day. Inside was a card, a photo of the whole family, gathered in matching pajamas, all smiles in front of a fireplace. I wasn't in it, of course, but this time they remembered to write my name. And underneath, in careful blue ink, "We missed you this year. Hope to see you next time." I stared at the card for a while. It didn't sting the way it once would have. I didn't read it as guilt or manipulation. Just an attempt. A late, awkward, imperfect attempt. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to burn the bridge or cross it. I just put the card in a drawer, not to forget, not to frame, just to let it be. Because here's what they'll never quite understand. I didn't build my company to prove them wrong. I built it to prove I was always right about me. That my instincts, my ideas, my value, they were never waiting on a seat at someone else's table. They were mine all along. And if that makes me the black sheep who made it, so be it. I've worn worse titles. None of them ever paid this well. This Christmas, I'll be out of town. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere warm. I'll bring my own wine, toast to my own victories, and maybe, just maybe, write a card of my own. Not to them, to me. The version of me who once sat alone on Christmas Eve, wondering if she'd ever be enough. All right. You were. You are. You always were. Years later, I found myself walking through the same neighborhood where I used to live during those forgotten Christmases. The bakery I couldn't afford was now one of my clients. The corner store that once sold me instant noodles on credit had my company's flyers in the window. And me. I walked in wearing sunglasses, not to hide, but because I finally could afford a December in California. Inside that bakery, I saw a small girl sitting at a table, trying to work on a drawing while her parents argued over the phone. She reminded me of me. Quiet, overlooked, balancing hope on a napkin. I paid for her cupcake, left a note, and walked out. No branding, no pitch, no moment to be posted. Just a gesture. Just the kind of presence I once begged for. You see, the best thing about building your own table isn't who sits at it now. It's who you make room for. The forgotten ones. The quiet ones. The ones who were told, not this year, and somehow turned that into fire instead of ashes. People like me. People like her. And if I have any legacy at all, I hope it's that I didn't just rise. I reached back. That's the gift I kept. Not the money. Not the building. Not the clinking of champagne flutes. The gift was knowing I became someone I would have needed, and that maybe, just maybe, I became that for someone else too. There was one moment I never told anyone about. It was the Christmas when I was 24. I had just moved to the city, barely making rent, working 2 jobs, and trying not to call home because I knew the call wouldn't change anything. That year, I saw the family photos online again. Everyone smiling in matching sweaters, holding mugs that probably had cocoa just for the photo. I hadn't even received a text. Not even one of those mass, Merry Christmas messages that get sent to the wrong numbers. Nothing. I sat in my apartment eating noodles, watching reruns, pretending I didn't care. But I did. Deeply. That night, I made a promise to myself, not out of anger but clarity. If no one was going to open the door for me, I'd stop knocking. I would stop waiting to be chosen, to be celebrated, to be enough in their eyes. And instead, I'd start choosing myself, not with grand declarations, but with small, consistent actions. Waking up earlier, learning skills no one knew I was learning, applying to opportunities one knew I'd have to work twice as hard to earn. Every bit of progress was fueled by the silence of those who never asked where I was. Now, years later, I walk into rooms where they still don't know what it cost me to get there. They only see the outcome, the name on the banner, the success on paper, the polished speech. They don't see the 24-year-old sitting in a freezing apartment, holding her phone, wondering what was so wrong with her that her own family didn't remember she existed. But I do, and I honor her every time I sign a contract, every time I speak at a conference, every time I show up, not just for myself, but for the ones no one showed up for. The irony, now they call me the inspiration of the family, the example, the success story, and I smile when I hear it, not because I believe them, but because I remember when their definition of success didn't include people like me. I don't resent them anymore. I simply outgrew the room they never invited me into. And now, the rooms I enter are mine. Not because they let me in, but because I built the door, the walls, and the table.